Right, hello guys, welcome to my new channel, AH News Live. This is basically a channel where we're going to sit and have a discussion about all of the hot headlines that have been in the papers over the past week or over the weekend. In this particular case, I've got the Guardian from Saturday the 28th of November with the headline, Sunak faces questions over family's fortune. And I've also got here the Daily Mail, that's that paper there, and the headline, locked in until Easter. So I'm just going to basically I've already seen a lot of these papers, but I just thought, now a good time as any to come on and share my opinion, especially as soon as I actually want to do journalism. I thought this might be interesting and it should be fun, because I am a very opinionated person, and you'd know that if you was to watch my main channel, Aidan Hamilton. If you haven't, then check it out. So, Sunak faces questions over the family's fortune. Now, personally, I actually quite like Rishi Sunak because I think he's a good chancellor. I know he dishes out a lot of money, and he's got the name Rishi Dishy, which I presume is because he is sharing a lot of money out, which the people do actually need in this country. And I do feel as though if we weren't, we'd most likely probably see people throwing him under the bus for that too. So in some cases, you really cannot win. But what it is the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, is facing questions over the transparency of his financial affairs after a Guardian investigation established that his wife and her family hold multi-billion pound portfolio of shareholdings and directorships that are not declared in the official register of ministers' interests. So, as you've just heard, basically, he's required by law to make sure that he shares any financial interest, not just of his, but actually of any of his nearest and dearest immediate family, and he hasn't done that. Akshata Murthy, who married Sunak in 2009, is the daughter of one of India's most successful entrepreneurs. Her father co-founded the technology giant Infosys, and her shares in the company are worth £430 million, making her one of the wealthiest women in Britain. I think that's really bad, actually, in all due respect. If it's required by duty to share his financial interests, and she's one of the wealthiest people in Britain, it actually says, with a fortune larger than the Queen's, then that definitely should have been reported. I don't really see what why that wasn't done. Sunak is bound by the ministerial code, which requires him to declare any financial interests that are relevant to his responsibilities and which could conflict with his duty to the public. Ministers must also declare those interests of their close family, including siblings, parents, spouse, and in-laws, that might give rise to a conflict. Sunak's entry mentions no family other than his wife and only refers to her ownership of a small UK-based venture capital company. Research by The Guardian shows that Murthy and her family hold many other interests, including a combined 1.7 billion shareholding in Infosys, which employs thousands of staff in the UK and has held contracts with government ministries and public bodies. 900 million a year joint venture with Amazon in India through an investment vehicle owned by Murthy's father. A direct shareholding by Murthy in a UK firm that runs Jamie Oliver and Wendy's burger restaurants in India. 5 other UK companies where Murthy is a director or director shareholder, including a Mayfair outfitter that supplies the tailcoats worn by pupils at Eton College. So she's not just got a £430 million share in Infosys, but actually she's got other shareholdings in other countries, and also her nearest and dearest family, which I'll come to in a minute, has as well. Sir Alistair Graham, a former chair of the Committee on Standards in Public Life, which acts as a watchdog for UK public office holders, said it was vital that Sunak declare the financial interest of himself and his close family, given the Chancellor's capacity to determine the government's financial and business policies. Family financial interests, here we go. After becoming Chief Secretary to Treasury in July 2019, Sunak revealed for the first time that he was the beneficiary of a blind trust. He also included Murthy for the first time, stating Mr. Sunak's wife owns a venture capital investment company, Catamaran Ventures UK Limited, There is no information about his own family or his wife's parents and siblings. Catamaran represents just a small part of the interests held by the Chancellor's wife. The source of her extraordinary wealth is a stake in Infosys founded by her father. According to Infosys' annual report, Ashkata owns 0.91% stake in the group. Of all the family, only her brother Rohan Murthy owns more of the company. The combined family holding is worth an estimated 1.7 billion. Murthy's holding is not a secret, and it's not clear why it was not declared in the register. The interest could be seen to present a conflict because Infosys is a contractor to the UK government and is publicly funded organisations. Wow. So imagine a company that is so close, actually got government contracts, has not been reported. And this is a person who's actually supposed to be sharing out money and actually supposed to be supervising the actual MPs and secretaries and ministers' wages. Which also reminds me of earlier this week we had Piers Morgan on Good Morning Britain, who he was asking Health Secretary Matt Hancock about whether or not he'd take a pay rise. And can you imagine he couldn't answer the question, and he just passed down the buck and said that Rishi Sunak is in negotiations with regard to their wages, and that he'll have to wait before he's able to answer that question. But as we know, he most likely will, which is why he couldn't say. Because it's a very simple question, isn't it, really? It's a very simple question. If you aren't or have no intention of taking a pay rise, you can just say no there and then, but he didn't, which means he will, which I think is terrible given his handling of this pandemic. He does not deserve, not any of them deserve a pay rise. And now we've got this. And I think he is a good chancellor because he's done a lot. I think the other chancellor, Shahid Javid, I think his name is, I never really heard much of him, but then again, we never had a pandemic on our hands. But £430 million sharehold in a company that actually has government contracts assigned to it. That's terrible, isn't it? Anyway, moving on, something else I thought was interesting. Gen Z. People put off having children due to climate concerns. People worried about the climate crisis have decided not to have children because of fears that their offspring would have to struggle through a climate apocalypse, according to the first academic study of the issue. The researchers surveyed 600 people aged 27 to 45 who were already factoring climate concerns into their reproductive choices and found 96% were very or extremely concerned about the well-being of their potential future children in a climate change world. One 27-year-old woman said, "I feel like I can't in good conscience bring a child into this world and force them to try and survive what may be apocalyptic conditions." These views were based on very pessimistic assessments of the impact of global heating on the world, the researchers said. One respondent, for example, said it would rival World War I in its sheer terror. The research also found that some people expressed regret over having had children. Any offspring would bring lifetime of carbon emissions that contribute to the climate emergency, but only 6% of those surveys were concerned about this carbon footprint. Now, in my personal opinion, I can understand why people might feel like that, but the truth is you don't actually know what the future holds. You know, it could be the next generation who actually tackle the problem of climate change. So to actually say that you don't want to have children, I can understand why you might want to, but then again, you could say that about anything, couldn't you? Because the world is not exactly the nicest place at this point in time. Oh, I don't want to have children because people are me. Social media exists, I don't want to have children. You know, you can say that about absolutely anything, really. So you just have to wait and see what the future holds. As things are going down south at the moment, technology is going up. Half of Britons say BLM protest raised racial tensions. Just over half, 55% of British adults believe the Black Lives Matter protests over summer increased racial tensions, according to a survey of more than 2,000 people by opinion. Only 17% of the people polled in October disagreed. Polling also showed 44% of minority ethnic people felt BLM increased racial tensions. BLM organisers said the findings showed the movement had exposed existing fault lines. Recent research indicates the rise of a number of black people saying they had faced discrimination in the past year from 74% in 2019 to 81%. In a possible sign of racism over the origin of COVID-19, the proportion of Chinese people saying they face discrimination rose from 68% to 76%, according to polling in June. Opinion's annual survey of multicultural Britain found 71% of people of Asian background suffered discrimination or abuse because of ethnicity, rising to 81% among black people. Well, I think it has, to be quite honest. I think people would have definitely had a lot of rage because it forced its change, hasn't it? And it still is. Black Lives Matter is still a thing that's going on. And quite frankly, some people just can't handle it. That's all I'm going to say on the situation. But some people just cannot handle a step in the right direction or a revelation. Something else I wanted to discuss. Something very exciting. It made me think we might actually be coming out of the pandemic, though wouldn't hold your breath. English hospitals told to get ready for vaccine rollout week after next. Hospitals have been told to prepare for the rollout of a coronavirus vaccine in as little as 10 days' time, with NHS workers expected to be the front of the queue, The Guardian has learned. NHS bosses said hospitals in England could expect to receive their first deliveries of a vaccine produced by Pfizer as soon as the 7th of December, with regulatory approval anticipated within days. According to the sources at several hospitals across the country, NHS England said they should expect to get stocks on the 7th, 8th, 9th of December. Initially, only NHS staff are set to be given the jab, with care home residents and the over 80s having to wait. Did they not say that the first people in line to get this vaccine would be the older generation people and the people in care homes? This is the thing, isn't it? And yet we've got people telling us that we're going to be exiting this pandemic in spring. I really wouldn't hold your breath, to be quite honest, because the amount of stuff that could happen between now and spring with this government is just so unknown, and they are so unpredictable. This is despite those two groups being classed by the government as top priorities for COVID-19 immunisation, exactly, as they have the greatest risk of death from the disease. Care sector chiefs reacted angrily, warning the move would be seen as a betrayal. Of course it would. Guidance issued in September by the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, the government's advisors who decide which groups get priority, said older people who live in care homes and their staff should be top of the list. Anyone over 80 and all those working in health and social care were the second priority, it said. Public Health England reiterated the priority list in guidance for the NHS yesterday, but the nature of the Pfizer vaccine appears to have forced a rethink. Its composition means it should be moved only a limited number of times, experts believe, and cannot easily be transported by healthcare staff such as GPs to care homes and older people's private residence. NHS officials believe that if it is moved more than 4 times, it risks becoming unstable and ineffective. By the time it reaches UK hospitals, it would have moved twice. From the Pfizer production plant in Belgium to storage hubs in Britain, and from those hubs into hospitals where it can be administered. One senior hospital executive said, "We've been told to expect the vaccine on the 7th of December and plan to start vaccinating our staff all that week. However, it's the Pfizer vaccine we're getting, so it can't be moved again once it gets to us, and we then have to use it within 5 days, as that's its shelf life. The original plan was to do care homes first, but once the vaccine gets to us, it can't be used in the community, so only the NHS will be able to have it, at least initially." That's not good, is it, really? That's not good at all. I mean, it's not good. It's not good. I really do think that they've really shunned people, this government have. They've really let people down, and I just think it's so bad. Always people that weren't able to go and see their loved ones in care homes. I don't want to touch on COVID too much because I want to talk about other stuff. But, you know, what's the point in trying to avoid it? I don't want to talk about it too much because we all know it's going on. But what's the point in trying to avoid something that's going on? It's happening, isn't it? So there's no point trying to hide away from it. Care home residents and those over 80 look increasingly likely to have to wait to receive the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which the government has referred to the MHRA. Unlike the Pfizer drug, it does not need to be frozen at minus 70 degrees to minus 80 degrees and can be stored in normal fridges and easily moved by GPs, nurses and health visitors who will administer jabs in locations such as care homes. One NHS official said the differences in the composition and potential availability of the Pfizer and Oxford vaccines mean the initial rollout could be stop-start, with a gap of weeks or even months between frontline health personnel and other priority groups being immunised. Martin Green, and the Chief Executive of Care England, which represents the UK's largest care home providers, said the decision was another case of them, the government, making announcements without being able to fulfil them. Well, that's what they've always done, haven't they? But we will hopefully have a light at the end of the tunnel, so I'm going to read about this now. When can we realistically expect social distancing to end? Matt Hancock has said the restrictions can be loosened once all the over 50s, younger people and health conditions and NHS and care workers have been vaccinated. He has said the bulk of vaccination for those groups will take place in January to March, whereby I believe we'll probably be having another national lockdown, and hopes that by Easter it may be possible to end social distancing. However, that assumes the vaccination blocks transmission of the virus as well as preventing severe illness, hospital admissions and death, which is what the trials have mainly been measuring. There are hints in the Oxford vaccine data that people who are vaccinated may not have asymptomatic infection, which they can pass to others. So basically what he's saying is it all depends on the vaccine and the vaccines, what the vaccine can do. But why is he having to question what the vaccine can do? We should know what the vaccine can do because we've been testing it. You're going to give it to people as soon as next week. We should know what the vaccine will do. You should be able to give us more clarity. And we all know that as much as the health secretary might say that now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen when he says it's going to happen, because that's what he does. Funny, isn't it? Because they run behind all of the thing is, whenever they are questioned, or whenever anyone, like especially Piers Morgan, whenever he questions them, most of the time they turn around and say is, oh, well, the scientific advice suggests, but they choose when they want to follow the scientific advice, don't they? Because they don't always follow it. And it's just really, really funny that they say that, but then when the SAGE, the Scientific Advisory Group, told them to lock the country down from as early as the 21st of September, they decided to ignore. And yet they want to say they are following all of the scientific advice. Macron. Video of police beating black music producer is shameful. The French government is scrambling to dampen rising anger over footage showing police beating a black music producer in Paris, the latest in a series of acts of alleged police violence to rock the country. Emmanuel Macron said a video of officers beating Michael Zekler in his studio was shameful, and said the government would have to find a way to restore public confidence in the police force. The images we have all seen of the aggression against Michael Zekler are unacceptable. They are shameful for all of us. France should never allow violence or brutality, no matter who it comes from. France should never let hate or racism prosper, Macron said in a statement on his Facebook page. Those whose job it is to apply the law should respect the law. Earlier, the French president was reported to have summoned his interior minister, Gerald Darmanin, to elicit to demand firm punishment for police accused of violence. 4 officers have been suspended pending an investigation into the arrest of Zekler last Saturday. The officers, who did not realise the incident was being filmed, reportedly gave false statements saying Zekler had attacked them and tried to grab one of their guns. The 4 were taken into police custody for questioning yesterday, that being on Friday. 3 are being questioned on charges of deliberate violence in a group with weapons and of racist nature. The 4th officer is under investigation for the same charge, as well as deliberate damage using dangerous means. Oh dear. Earlier in the day, Zekler's lawyer, Hafida El Ali, has said she was disappointed the men were not being held in custody. My client spent a completely unjust unjustifiable 48 hours in police custody, she said, accusing the police of making false statements and of having outrageously attacked him. If we didn't have the videos, my client might be in prison right now. After the attack, Zekler, 41, told journalists, "These people were supposed to protect me. I didn't do anything to deserve that. I want these people punished by law. Of course I was afraid. It's lucky I have the videos to protect me. This shouldn't happen." Europe 1 reported that Macron had seen red after watching the video, which spread on social media on Thursday. His reaction was confirmed by other French media. French celebrities, sporting stars and politicians have also lined up to condemn the attack. Footballers, including the French internationals Kylian, I'm not going to bother to pronounce the surname, and Antoine, expressed their anger. "Unacceptable film, unacceptable violence. France has values, principles and codes of behaviour. Stop racism," one tweeted. Not good. It really isn't. And yeah, so I definitely think it has sparked off a lot of anger. I think it has made, as for that first report about whether or not the Black Lives Matter movement actually increased racism and racial attacks, I think it absolutely has. Donald Trump. Despite having his strongest hints yet that he is coming to accept his loss of the White House to Joe Biden, Donald Trump's continuing reluctance to leave office and baseless claims about electoral fraud are increasingly starting to worry his own party. In particular, Republicans are concerned that the chaos caused by Trump's stance and his false comments on the conduct of the election in the key swing state of Georgia, which Biden won for the Democrats, could hinder his party's efforts to retain control of the Senate. At the moment, control of the upper chamber of US government hangs in the balance as runoff races for states' 2 Senate seats play out over the remainder of 2020, with an election in early January. If Democrats win those seats, they grab the Senate, while if Republicans emerge victorious, they keep control and can seriously hinder Biden's agenda and even his ability to freely pick up his cabinet. But Trump has attacked the election system in Georgia, even though it is headed by Republicans, after Biden flipped through the southern state of the Democrats for the first time since 1992. On Thanksgiving, a day usually reserved for presidential platitudes, Trump broke with tradition and repeated those attacks in a now rare face-off with journalists. "I'm very worried about that," Trump said when asked about his previous baseless claims of fraud in Georgia. "You have a fraudulent system," he then called Georgia's Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who has defended the state's election process, an enemy of the people. Such attacks have Republicans worried as they seek to motivate Georgia voters to go to the polls in January, volunteer for the Senate campaigns, and perhaps, most importantly of all, dig deep into their pockets to pay for the unexpected runoff races. I think Donald Trump. I think most people would agree that Donald Trump now needs to just accept his defeat and walk, but he won't because he's a child and he's childish. Right, one last COVID article, and I'm going to forget about it. It is a winter of discontent in Shakespeare's birthplace after Stratford-upon-Avon found itself in Tier 3 despite low infection rates. Listen to this. Pubs and restaurants in the historic market town had been busy putting up Christmas decorations and taking bookings when they got the bad news. Although the Warwickshire town's already low rates are falling still further, it has found itself lumped in with the rest of the county. Yet towns in nearby Oxfordshire and Worcestershire with higher rates are in Tier 2. Marcus Torres, co-owner of 3 restaurants in Stratford, said he was deflated and disappointed. He and business partner Nigel Lambert were fully booked from next week, when they had expected to reopen. They have spent thousands on deep cleaning, plastic dividers, and other COVID measures. "We were in Tier 1 before, and cases are still very low, so it was a huge shock to find out we were in Tier 3, he said. "It's nonsensical, really, a huge blow, not just for us, but for the whole of Stratford-upon-Avon. People are really upset and angry. Stratford has an infection rate of 105.3 per 100,000. Among the over 60s, the rate is even lower at 74 per 100,000, while the hospitalisation rate is also low, with fewer than 2 people a day being admitted. The town recorded 137 new cases in the week, ending November 22nd, a drop of 67. At a more local level, the area of Stratford South East and Torrington had just 4 cases, a rate of 48.2 per 100,000. But nearby Redditch in Worcester, with the rate of 240 cases per 100,000, is in Tier 2. Mr. Torres, co-owner of Lambs, the opposition and the Vinter said all they could do was hope to be put in Tier 2 when they are reviewed in 2 weeks. The Royal Shakespeare Company had planned to restart performances next month, welcoming audiences back for the first time since March. It had also sold the tickets, but has also had to shelve its plans to make the production online only. See, this is the thing, isn't it? So this is why I personally believe none of it makes sense. The fact that we had a 4-week lockdown, came out of the lockdown, to then have tougher restrictions, changing the tier system so that 99% of the population are in tier 2 and 3, to then completely disregard the tougher restrictions, or what the plan is if Boris Johnson's actually able to get it through Parliament, to loosen up and completely disregard all of the tier system for Christmas, and allowing up to 3 households to meet up. It's just an absolute mess, isn't it? And I don't know yet, but this is what I personally see. I see us coming out of the tougher restrictions if they get through for Christmas, back in lockdown in the January, in lockdown probably until about March, so about 2 months or so, and then exiting the pandemic with the AstraZeneca vaccine available. That's personally what I think. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's where I see things going. I mean, Sage even recommended and told the government that infection rates could double, and yet they still decide they're going to do that. I mean, I personally think it's good, but it's just an example as to why people don't bother to follow the government's advice as much as they were in March. I don't think we shouldn't meet for Christmas, because we should. It's been a terrible year. This is probably one of the most vital years for people to meet with their family, but it does show you exactly why people are just doing what they like and they're not following the government's rules and regulations anymore. Right, that's the end of that. And now I want to move on to Ghislaine Maxwell. At Thanksgiving, Americans get together to celebrate what really matters: family, friends, food and fellowship. Even if COVID-19 is this year putting a break on many reunions, it must be the hardest time of the year to be behind bars. And the holiday, which began on Thursday and continues all weekend, will certainly not be an easy one for one prisoner, Ghislaine Maxwell. In the glory days when she and Jeffrey Epstein glided through their pampered world of private jets, Caribbean islands and amenable royal friends, this US holiday season would see the tireless British socialite spend more than a month partying in the billionaire circles of Manhattan and Palm Beach, Florida, that she and her paedophile chum love to move in. Today, as she languishes in her tiny solitary cell at the forbidden Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York, her mind may be wandering back to the Thanksgivings past, perhaps the ones she and Epstein spent at the Palm Beach mansion of their great friends Glenn and Eva Dubin, one of New York's best connected couples. Glenn, a billionaire hedge fund manager, and Eva, a former Miss Sweden and prominent Manhattan doctor, were old friends of Epstein. Eva was Epstein's ex-girlfriend. And they remained so loyal that even after he was jailed in 2008 for socialiting a minor, Eva told Epstein's probation officer they were happy to have him over and mixed with their 3 children, including a beautiful young daughter, Virginia Roberts, accuser of both Epstein and Maxwell, said in a 2015 lawsuit that Glenn Dubin was the first powerful man Epstein sent her to have sex with a claim Dubin denies. The Dubins, like so many of Maxwell's old friends, have since run for the hills, insisting they knew nothing about the sordid allegations against a toxic pair. Nowadays, Maxwell, 58, has more basic concerns. According to her friends and lawyers, she can no longer take necessities such as soap, toothbrushes, bras, and even sleep for granted as she awaits trial in a jail that a former warden described as the most troubled facility in the US. Good. The authorities say they are simply trying to keep her alive and ensure she doesn't copy Epstein, who was able to hang himself in jail as he awaited trial. Her supporters, fighting for her to be released on bail and who dismiss claims she is a flight risk, insist she is being singled out for especially harsh treatment as the principal surviving villain is one of the most notorious criminal scandals for decades. There will certainly be no big holiday party for Maxwell, who wouldn't have anything to wear, having swapped her designer wardrobe for a regulation t-shirt and leggings when she was moved into the MDC in July. Indeed, very little festive human contact, as all is likely for the woman who always knew everyone at the party, except for the moment on Thursday when a guard pushed through her cell's food hatch a tray of traditional Thanksgiving dinner, turkey, stuffing, mashed potato, cranberry, and any other trimmings a cash-strapped prison system can afford. As a vegan who has allegedly already lost 25 pounds thanks to the limited menu, she probably found it less enticing than it sounds, considering the horrific allegations against her that she not only found and groomed underage girls for Epstein to sexually abuse, but also sometimes took part in the assaults. It might strike some as ironic that her camp is now complaining her human rights are being ignored. However, while Maxwell certainly faces damning prosecution evidence, she is yet to be tried for anything, let alone convicted. When Epstein committed suicide in his cell last summer, 12 days after being taken off suicide watch, Maxwell went to ground as the FBI made it clear it was looking for her. Since her discovery and dramatic arrest at a house deep in the woods of New Hampshire in July, prosecutors successfully argued that Maxwell, who possessed 3 passports and huge funds, was a serious flight risk and should be denied bail. I wasn't even aware that she was in a cell or put away, but good. And I hope she rots. One last article I wanted to share, but I'm not able to find it. Here it is. Goldfish make comeback as low-fuss pets for work-home Britons. You can't cuddle or stroke them and forget about taking them for a walk. Yet the humble goldfish is making a comeback as more Britons embrace pet ownership. The switch to working from home has led to a well-documented rise in households adopting puppies and kittens, but the retailer Pets at Home says fish keeping is also enjoying a renaissance. After a period of what looked like terminal decline, Peter Pritchard, the chief executive of Pets at Home, said fish keeping was increasing for the first time since he joined the firm a decade ago. People are at home more, he said. It is an easy way to get into pet ownership. They don't need walks and you can leave the fish alone. The cost of setting up a tank started at about £50, Pritchard said, with the fish a couple of pounds on top of that. But as with any hobby, the sky is the limit, with the retailer selling extras such as £60 ornaments shaped like the Acropolis. Fish keeping is a hobby that requires a degree of involvement from easy through to very sophisticated, added Pritchard. It is very rewarding. A fish tank is an incredibly peaceful thing to have in your home. It is, because I own one. It may also be one of the few options open to those living in rented accommodation, suggested Dick Mills of the Federation of British Aquatic Societies. Some landlords don't want cats and dogs, but don't mind fish tanks, he said. I mean, the worst that can happen is that it leaks. Fish keeping is a practical choice, but also provides a mental workout as owners must grapple with the maths, physics and biology to keep their fish alive. And that's before you get into what type of fish you are going to own. Is it going to be a cold water, warm water, or tropical marine fish, said Mills. You have got so much to choose from. It's the best living picture you can hang on your wall. The shift to working from home has benefited Pets at Home, which has 451 stores and was classed as an essential retailer by the government. Membership of its Puppy and Kitten Club, where cat and dog owners receive expert advice and exclusive offers, is 25% higher than this time last year. This week, it said sales at established stores were up nearly 8% in 3 months to 8th of October. Well, I can kind of understand that, because obviously if you're at home, you're going to want a little bit of entertainment, aren't you? I still find they can be bloody hard work. Well, not hard work, but you just have to have a lot of patience in order to make sure that they are looked after and maintained well. But unfortunately, my one passed away and I had to flush him down the toilet. But, I had a goldfish, and you have to make sure that you put the right amount of solution in the water. You have to make sure that you clean out the water. You have to take out a certain amount of the water and replace a certain amount of the water, and you have to do this and you have to do that. And it can be quite a time-consuming process, although fish are probably one of the easiest pets to have. But yes, thank you very much for watching. That's going to conclude this week's newspaper analysis. If you enjoyed the video, do give it a thumbs up. Do subscribe. It would help me out a lot. And enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you very much.